Chapter 2, Pfungwe, Zimbabwe. Thursday, 23rd May, 1985. Pfungwe, Zimbabwe. I was up at 6:15 a.m. and Graham appeared at 7ish. John lounged in bed after a heavy night at the Masons. One of the cats fell off the balcony. Amazingly, it was okay. Later, we went to John's friend Ian to load the Land Rover up. Wow, his place is squalid. Met Graham at 10:30 a.m. and set off for Pfungwe again. Alas, maintenance issues were plaguing the poor old girl from the last trip, having been overloaded and rattled by the roads. She had no door on the driver's side, so it was unbelievably dusty. When we arrived, we looked like grey old men from head to toe. We saw 3 baboons ambling across the road. They hardly gave us a second glance. Perhaps they were feeling the heat as well. We stopped to see the doctor, a local witch doctor, and he gave Graham and John some muti, African traditional medicine, which would keep them healthy and energetic. Very tired after that trip. Perhaps I need some of the doctor's muti. So I went to bed at about 7:30 to 8:00 p.m. Graham and John joked about my snoring. I must get it sorted out. Friday, 24th May, 1985. Pfungwe, Zimbabwe. Up at 6:15 a.m. for breakfast and tried to get Graham's gold machine working. However, I was unsuccessful due to its poor design and lack of water. It was a soil vacuum for extracting sediment from the riverbed, for processing in riffles to extract gold. The principle was sound, as it was not an original design, but he was using a rather Heath Robinson affair. We resigned ourselves to our poverty and continued our manual digging. Very little gold. Graham played making dams and lakes. A waste of time. I finished watching him around 3:30 p.m. and he was hoping to get a sufficient body of water for his machine to work. It's not as hot as it was last week, thank goodness. I think John is barking up the wrong tree. He will not find gold in anything like the quantity he is hoping for here. He must stop spending. B. After John packed the operation up, others tried, but at significant cost to the environment and local people's lives, and such operations are now banned. See articles in the notes and references section. Gold overly excites people, for obvious reasons, I know. John registered the claims here in the bush, but this was well-trodden ground. Some well-known operations in the area, such as the Southern Cross Mine, were abandoned due to the difficulty of making the enterprises profitable. Some people, including John and many of his friends, theorized that the old methods of extraction were inefficient, and with the proper techniques, even the old mines' spoil tips could yield a profitable return. However, this means utilizing highly hazardous chemicals, which may be detrimental to everyone and everything. As mining claims were limited, some people claim jump or poach other people's legal entitlements. Shortly before I arrived, someone had tried to buy gold from people working on John's claim. Perhaps they felt entitled because John was white. Who knows? But his manager, Gwati, was on the scene and shot out the man's tyres and then shot him in the leg with a .38 revolver, which somewhat put the cat amongst the pigeons and raised John's head above the parapet, etc. Gwati was let off the attempted murder charge, though. He had been in prison with and knew Robert Mugabe during the independence struggles some time before 1975, so perhaps he pulled a string or two. John said, "Quite right. It was only a .38 revolver, and you can't do much damage with that. However, I don't think I'd like to be on the receiving end of it." I'm looking forward to seeing Lou. Her roadie accent seems stronger than I remember it, although I'm getting used to it now, as it is everywhere. After supper, John and Graham decided they had to go down and try the machine again, repeating the process 5 to 10 times. John told me a joke that I had told him when I was 10 about gâteau and bollocks, which was lost to me, but funny this time around. I stared at the stars, which were very different here. The Southern Cross was remarkably clear, unlike the North Star back home. I saw a shooting star and hoped my luck might improve. Saturday, 25th May 1985, Pfungwe, Zimbabwe. Davidson, John's caretaker in the bush, woke John and the rest of us at 5 a.m. to ask if a local woman could be driven to Murawa, 100 kilometres away, because she had fallen ill and was pregnant. John took her to Ciskei, but she unfortunately had a miscarriage, common with malaria victims, and many people here in the bush have malaria. Up at 6:30 a.m. and after breakfast, out hunting for gold, and watched John sinking his tubes for the machine. Men's wealth here is measured in wives and children. The witch doctor was very impressed with Swaziland's old king, as he has about 50 or more wives, and who knows how many children. The average around here seems to be 3 or 4 wives, but few seem to know how many offspring they have. Here, John and Graham use the place name Pfungwe instead of funny when referring to odd, quirky African things. Pretty Pfungwe. Meat is hung up in the kitchen, salted first, and left for days with hopeful flies buzzing around. Not entirely appetizing, given the heat and the pong, but we haven't died yet. Last night, Graham made a quip about needing to put Dettol in a dip outside our hut doors, but John said in a quizzical way, "But that would kill things." It was very funny at the time. The chickens have laid no eggs, so we shall probably eat them instead. I am going to go for a bathe in the river. We've been drinking the stuff, so it should be okay. Sunday, 26th May 1985, Pfungwe, Zimbabwe. I woke up quite late this morning. Those bloody chickens start making so much noise so early. Graham and I walked up the stream, rolling over dozens of rocks, hoping for a nugget. Nothing there. I tried sadza, maize porridge, with onion curry. It was pretty nice, but they live on the stuff. I have just had a look at the loo. Very Pfungwe. I have had a read and a kip, but I still have a bit of a headache. John and Graham advised wearing sunglasses, which is sensible. I discovered that I have been giving John Bonjela for mouth ulcers, for the cuts on his hands. In my defence, it was dark when I found it in my bag. Davidson gave me a baobab nut when I arrived, and I found a smaller one which I opened. It tasted quite pleasant, somewhat like sherbet, but with a sour aftertaste. John and Graham are still discussing the tubes and pumps. That subject is getting well worn. and I am sure he is wrong. Many people have tried before, and I am sure many will try again in the future. Extracting a heavy metal from alluvial deposits isn't hard, but it is very difficult if there is not much there. Monday, 27th May, 1985. Went to sunbathe, but the clouds came over. So Graham and I dug and panned some more. I have the hang of it now. Pfungwe chicken for supper, so they will not wake us up any more. I tried some of Davidson's chibuku, really very good. It is thick like porridge, so you must shake the stuff first, but it is pleasantly alcoholic and nutritious. John told me more stories about the conflict. However, he dismissed the whole thing. He clearly quite enjoyed his time and the odd characters he met, such as Dirk Schillerwert, a native of Belgium, who was a bit of a shady character. However, he remained extremely popular during his service with the Rhodesian Light Infantry. He had previously served as one of the crafty rogues of the French Foreign Legion prior to arriving in Rhodesia as a foreign volunteer. Serving as a gunner, he was well respected for his bush skills. His ashen complexion always burned an uncomfortable pinkish red, highlighting the many tattoos that were a hallmark of his past life. A gentle giant with a hulking frame, he did all this with a smile on his face and a friendly demeanour to all, except to any unfortunate who crossed his path. During his service in Rhodesia, he was wounded during a claymore accident, but appears to have recovered and returned to duty. John told me he had deserted the Legion and gone to Rhodesia after finding a guy in bed with his boyfriend and shooting them. Charming. Still, John woke up one night to find a drunk Dirk in his bed and had to gently explain that he liked Dirk, but not in that way. Although they remained good friends, I have a letter that Dirk sent to John many years later. Tuesday, 28th May, 1985. Up at 06:15 a.m. for Pfungwe brekker. Sweet potatoes, marrow, sausages and bread, finished with choco CCP, hot chocolate with vodka. Norbert sorted out our gold from the black sand, and I asked him to make me a mazumba, a local gold pan. We had another very dusty drive back to Harare, but are looking forward to hot showers followed by haggis for dinner tonight. I want to hear Move Closer and Walking on Sunshine on the radio again. Popular songs from the UK charts were interspersed with popular Zimbabwean music, such as the Bundu Boys, and other African music, like Them Mushrooms from Kenya, resulting in an interesting fusion of fun and lively music, with relatively little discourse, apart from the news. John invited Sue around. She's a men's hairdresser and will cut my hair when it needs it. Haggis, neeps and tatties, etc. were excellent. Who'd have thought I would indulge in such delicacies in Zimbabwe, eh? It's now 9:11 p.m, so I will listen to the radio and be up early tomorrow for work, rather than trying to get work done. Wednesday, 29th May, 1985, Harare, Zimbabwe. Quite a good day so far. Work went well, Coats, bless their souls, have sent over 933, which is about 2,146.96 in 2025, according to the HMRC calculator. I must phone them tomorrow, and my passport will be ready on Friday. I have got John's old army rucksack to use, so future travels might be cool. Emma sent a rather depressing letter to me very quickly on May 25th, but it lifted me with the good bits. I will reread it later and send her a letter or a postcard. I went to Vistarama, the local cinema, but only love films on. Got a dodgy takeaway from Yum Yum. Graham and John came back 6:30ish. Graham left and John cooked a curry type thing and introduced me to lacto, which was pretty good, thick and creamy. It is a traditionally fermented milk product, often enjoyed as a beverage or with meals. It's a popular food item with a rich history and is often enjoyed with sadza, a thick porridge made from maize flour, or bread, but I'm not sure if there's an equivalent at home. Sent a postcard to Sister Sophie, read and listened to the radio. John met a fellow miner tonight, quite a character from what I gather. I started reading Death of a Fellow Traveller. It is okay. Going to hit the hay now, 9:30 p.m. Thursday, 30 May 1985, Harare, Zimbabwe. The Citroën had to be pushed yet again. The car could do with a service and some new parts. We took the battery to a garage and they will rebuild it. Incredible. They cut out the top, insert new plates, and glue it back together. Recycling and repairing things here is quite effective. Little goes to waste. When your fridge stops cooling, you can have a technician re-gas or replace the compressor, which is a more consumer-friendly approach than in Europe, where perfectly good working appliances are often discarded due to appearance or other trivial matters. Graham came around later and gave me a lift to the police station. DC Chigoanyika was out. That reminds me. I must phone him in a minute. It's almost 4 p.m. Then I went to the bank and withdrew my money and looked around for a good place on Manukau Road with sleeping bags, etc. I walked home, stopping at Avondale Shopping Centre, but I couldn't find sultanas for bread and butter pudding. I had a chat with Susie. Her boyfriend, Mike Mingay, knows where Terry is. I phoned the NatWest Bank Insurance Department and they will process the claim. Phoned Lou. Hopefully she's coming up tomorrow to go to a do at the old Hararean Sports Club. I went to Budget Travel to suss out options for exploring and to find out how much it costs to get to Malawi, which is Zimbabwe, $140, which is a fair chunk of money. I don't have a lot, so I will need to think about it a bit. I also went to Avondale Shopping Centre and swapped some horrid shorts I bought for boxer shorts. The style of shorts here is a bit extreme. They seem to prefer wearing shorts that are about 2 sizes too small, which is not very comfortable in this heat, or anywhere for that matter, and not very stylish. Soldiers would frequently wear them in the bush, but I prefer a looser fit for a bit of air circulation. I read my travel book, Africa on a Shoestring, and Zambia sounds tricky, but I want to go to Kenya. Direct flights from Harare are Zimbabwe, $450. Went to Sue's for dinner and met Mike Mingay and Arthur. Friday, 31st May 1985, Harare, Zimbabwe. Ooh, did I feel rough this morning? I still do, in fact. I had a lie-in until 08:45. I met Wilf, John's pawnbroker friend from Johannesburg, South Africa, and paid 200 tollens for a Pentax Super program and lenses. I think it's about right, as it's a pretty good camera, although it's more complicated compared to my Nikon Nikomat. We're off to a Bavarian night with Lou and the gang. That seems about right, I suppose. I will rest now. John came back from a sundowner. Left a message for Lou as she had not turned up, and went to the George Hotel in Avondale, now long gone. Lou turned up 15 minutes later. She seems very different to when I knew her in the UK. She was pretty quiet there, but here seemed more confident and at home, I guess. We went to this really bad roadie do, and then to the High Chaparral after. Letter. Undated, but Siamay, June sometime. P.O. Box A48, Avondale, Harare, Zim. Dear Ma and Sis. You want to know what the bush is like, eh? Well, at the moment it is still fairly green, but it is drying rapidly because there will be no rain until late October or November. The grass is sometimes knee height, most common, and there is quite a bit of elephant grass, up to 7 to 8 feet. There are plenty of bushes and trees at Pfungwe. You can find various berries such as Cape gooseberries, which are very tasty, prickly cucumbers, and baobab trees, which can be enormous. Much of the countryside is very rocky, with balancing rocks everywhere, and varying amounts of woodland. Bushy grassy expanses, and little round mud huts dotted around. Occasionally we hear and see baboons. I have witnessed hippo prints in the mud below the camp. There are lots more animals of all kinds, but they are rarely seen. You must be up before dawn. But, baobab trees are sacred here. They are often hollow at the top, and people were, and probably still are, buried in them. The one next to our hut has cacti growing on top of it. Hope you like this letter. Love. Mark XXX. Saturday, August and June 1985. Harare, Zimbabwe. Up late, feel fine. Experimented with the camera. It is far more complex than my old fully manual Nikon. And wrote out the insurance stuff. John came back at lunchtime and we went shopping. Then, for a drink at the George Hotel, as usual. He was wearing his slippers. His army nickname was Slippers, apparently. When accosted by the doorman and told he couldn't wear slippers in the bar, John exclaimed, "Slippers. These are not slippers, but orthopedic shoes." The speechless doorman let us in. I'm learning about Africa all the time. Mike turned up and we drove home for a few more drinks. After that, we went up to Susie's. When Alfred arrived, I left. Susie gave me some sultanas. So now I can make my bread and butter pudding. I will rest again soon, as I didn't get in until around 0430 to 0500. I noticed today that the leaves are falling off the trees. The colour is fading rapidly from the land. The jacarandas, once so decorated with flowers of a purple-blue colour that played with your eyes, seem to be on an ultraviolet wavelength, making it hard to focus on them. They produce a glorious aura, are becoming bare, ready for renewal. We are having salt beef boiled with carrots tonight. Never had that before. Lou hasn't phoned. so I will write her off. Graham phoned about a party tonight, so I will take a look. Sunday, 02 June 1985, Harare, Zimbabwe. Got in at 0400-ish. Lou turned up last night and was going to the same party. Lou, her boyfriend and I went to the Acropolis restaurant for toots. Drinks first. We all went to the party afterwards. It was huge, with cars everywhere. Yeah. I saw Graham, etc., who told me about another do at the Peak today, and Lou and Co. should be coming too. We went along, and Mike was there too. John introduced me to Stu, who promised to arrange a parachute jump for me. I am off to Lou's on Friday for a change of scene. It's a bit chilly today, so I'll have to ask Sue for a haircut. Lou did not get in touch. We went to the Peak, stopping off to pick up some offerings for the get-together. We were driving whilst having a cold beer. John put his between his legs to enter the car park, and the speed bump made it fizz over, but he wasn't bothered that it looked like he had peed himself. He strolled to the shop and back like nothing was amiss. The dough was the standard Zimbabwe party. Glorious weather, a pleasant atmosphere, lots of food and drink, of course. We went for a long walk. I took a couple of pictures at the Peak, and on the walk with John, Graham and company, we had to walk through a large area of elephant grass, which was much taller than any of us, so we couldn't really see where we were going. And as we bashed our way through, Graham said, "Gosh, this is pretty intrepid," which made John give me a wry smile, as if to say, "Really?" And I was amused as well, but it was a fun trek. The photos didn't come out well. The only one of us was very blurry. Yeah. It was really hot and humid, and as I sweated along, remarking on the heat, John would just say, "Well, I can take it or leave it," or "I rise above it," which he did whenever anything was odd, difficult, or when things went wrong. Back home, 2200-ish, absolutely knackered. I had a dream about Charlotte Long, bless her soul, last night. I hope to have more posts this week. I'm a letter junkie. Monday, 03 June 1985, Harare, Zimbabwe. I went around with John this morning and wrote a letter to D, my father, had a haircut, and read Death of a Traveller a bit more. John and I prepared dinner and went out for a drink at the Wine Barrel. I had to wear a pair of size 8 shoes. Ouch. As we were sitting there, John spotted an American guy with one leg. Apparently, he was a captain in the army and got his leg blown off by a landmine trying to rescue some of his guys. The story went that some of the men who had got out of it first blamed him for getting them into trouble, so demanded that he get the others out. He did, but it cost him his leg. We came home for our salt beef, etc., which was quite nice indeed, although it could have been soaked in water a little longer to remove the salt, which is the correct method. But we were impetuous. I had to get up about 10 times to quaff water, bumping into John, doing the same as we were so dehydrated. John and I talked a lot about women, cultural differences, the Rhodesian War, etc. Sue cut my hair. She offered John a trim too, but John liked to have a hack at his hair himself. It was apparent, but he didn't care. I was sure Terry was going to visit us today. paranoid, I guess. John talked about the Rhodesian War. Apparently it was a tea party. Very few people were affected. Dave H. said his business improved, and the bulk of the SAS were conscript kids who never did any real operations. The Sellers Scouts, on the other hand, did mainly observation post, OP tasks. The war was a haven for interesting ideas and special units, e.g. K-Cars and the Grey Scouts, psyops and eccentric adventurers. I wonder about John's description of the fighting. It was clearly no picnic for many, and I heard stories of cross-border raids into Zambia, targeting training camps, where no one was spared, and others about the terrorists undoing hearts and minds. Work whenever they could, even if it meant chopping off a child's arm that they received a vaccination in, which was not uncommon. Terror must have been very real for some, if not many. He told me tales of guys shooting their pistols in the barrack rooms at a dartboard, but the bullets went straight through the wall. Crazy and reckless, but as John liked to say, it seemed like a good idea at the time. Tuesday, 4th June, 1985, Harare, Zimbabwe. John gave me a lift into town, and I had a really good look around. I bought a rubber lens hood for the camera for $9.50 and some Guernsey C. It is meant to combat hangovers. I seem to get a lot of those here. A man in the park who claimed he was from Malawi accosted me and said he could not get work without a permit, which cost Zimbabwe $6. I gave him $1 and a few cents. He was probably lying. He had a game leg, which he attributed to a vitamin deficiency. I caught a taxi back to Avondale, and John was out at a rehearsal at the lodge, and afterwards we were going out to Buster's, one of the city's most popular nightlife spots in the late 1970s and into the 1980s, and then drinks at the Flying Club. Wednesday, 5 June 1985, Harare, Zimbabwe. Off to town, but I couldn't get a traveller's cheque cashed because I had no passport, although they cashed them yesterday, so I couldn't get my insurance sorted out. I bumped into Graham and he gave me a lift home, where there was a multitude of posts waiting for me today. Jaime, Charlotte, Rachel and Mark Holden. I sent off the AA document for my international driving licence. I have only managed to write to Nigel Adams and my mother. We had chicken for dinner, and Graham came round and got me into yet another stupid argument about imperial measurements being superior to metric, sparked off by my stating that centigrade is far more sensible than Fahrenheit. I tried to make the point that most of the world had gone metric, and any machine he was making would be easier using the system. He rejected this, but I thought, that may explain why his machine is not working. I will write those letters tomorrow, and I also need to get insured. Thursday, 6 June, 1985, Harare, Zimbabwe. I'm not sure if I've achieved much today. I read a book about Shona customs and language, which is a book that was given to soldiers during the struggles. John was well versed in both. He felt it was essential to be able to adapt here. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. I also watched The Terminator, which was very entertaining. It is an incredible film which certainly has you on the edge of your seat. Well worth watching. I have not managed to post Jaime's, Charlotte's, or Rachel's letters. I've worked out the program mode on the camera and I'm looking forward to using it. I almost took a photo of a yellow bird in the tree, but it was a little too far away. I packed up some stuff for my trip to Mutare. I just must sort out my toiletries. Tears for Fears from my hometown, Bath. Kurt went to my school, and I worked with his wife in a pizza restaurant before leaving for Africa. A #1 in the pop charts with Shout, and Sade is in with Smooth Operator. It is almost like the UK. John's got a friend around tonight, naughty boy.